Hi there, my name is Claudia Chan. Thank you so much for joining me on this Faux Calligraphy workshop. I know that this is such a stressful time for all of us right now, having to do the social distancing. I know that some of you may be stressed out because you're not working, or you may be stuck at home trying to figure out what you want to do next. And then, of course, there are some of you who are with kids, and you're probably racking your brain trying to figure out what you want to do with them. So that's why I would like to offer you this free calligraphy workshop so that we can all do something fun. Now, in terms of calligraphy, I do use a pointed pen, but actually half of the time that I do is full calligraphy. So because if let's say I have to write on any non-paper surface, and that is the time for me to do full calligraphy. So it is a very versatile script. I am super excited to be sharing it with you. And it's nothing too complex. All you really need is to print out my worksheet, which you can find on my link. And all you need is a pen or pencil. And right now I am going to switch my camera around. You can see what I'm doing.
So for those of you who have not printed out your worksheet yet, I highly recommend that you print out your workbook so that you can follow along. And for those of you who are wondering what kind of writing tools you will need, all you really need is either a pencil or a mechanical pencil or a pen or gel pen or anything that you have at home. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, so we can get started right away. So what is faux calligraphy? In order to answer that question, we have to look at what exactly we're producing. The pen that I'm using is a pointed pen, or there are also some people who actually use brush pen. The main idea is that anytime you do an upstroke, you do a light stroke, and when it comes down on a downstroke, you put pressure on it. So for a pointer pen, when you put pressure on it, the tines will split, and then that's where it creates that thick line. For a brush pen, same thing. When you press down on it, the tip will create a thick line when it comes down. In this example, birthday, anytime you see that there is a downstroke, I needed to put pressure on it in order to create that thick stroke. So our goal is to use a normal pen or pencil and create a word that looks like we have done it with a pointed pen or a brush pen. This is what it will look like if I'm just doing the strokes in a normal pen. And now on every downstroke, I put a thicker line on it. And once I fill this out, it looks like I have actually written it with a pointed pen. In other words, we are physically thickening up all the downstrokes of all the letters. You may think that, oh no, I'm scared of picking up calligraphy because it looks really complicated and I have very poor handwriting. I can't possibly do it. Well, let me tell you, I also have very poor handwriting. My handwriting is like chicken scratch. So you don't have to worry about that because in calligraphy, all the letters and the words are actually broken down by what we call basic strokes. So if you can focus on each of the basic strokes and when you put them all together, then they're going to create letters and then they're going to create words. Before we begin, I'm going to go through what you'll see in the upcoming pages. You'll see somewhat of a grid like this, and this is called our guidelines. There is a baseline. This is where all the letters will sit on, and this is the X line or the waist height. This is where the A's and the C's and the E's will come up to. And the ascending line, which is where all the L's and B's and K's or H's, they are going to come up to. And the descending line is where all the G's, J's, Y's will come down to. Here are the basic strokes that we will be doing. This is the lead-in stroke. This is a straight line. This is the underturn. And this is the overturn. And this is the complex curve. And this is the oval. This is the ascending loop. This is the descending loop. This is a lead-in wave stroke. Now, this stroke, you will not be seeing it today because we will only be doing lowercase letters, so that this is for the uppercase letters. And this is the reverse oval. As you can see, All the pink line is the downward part of the stroke, and this is the part of the stroke that we want to thicken. And 2 more tips before we go further. If you want to make sure that your letters and words end up looking very pretty, here are 2 important tips. The first one is whenever there are curves in your lines, you want to make sure that you thicken the line but only reach either right before the turn or after the turn is complete. What does that mean? It means that for the underturn, we're going to thicken the line, but we're going to taper off before the curve begins. So the thickening of the stroke would end around here. For the overturn, we're going to start thickening the stroke after the turn has completed. Then this is where we're going to start thickening the stroke. For an oval, since we're going to start off right here, this is where we have completed the turn. That's when we start the thickening of the stroke. And then right before we finish the turn, that's when we finish thickening the stroke. What that means is we do not want to start thickening the stroke up here. We don't want to finish thickening the stroke down here, or start up here and finishing down here. And the main reason is because once you have the thin lines at the curves, it's going to give you a more elegant look. So this is tip number 1. Tip number 2, this is the slant line of the grid. Now this is a random slant line that I have given you as a guide for today. When you're practicing on your own, you may either be writing a little bit more upright or a little bit more slanted. It doesn't really matter, this is a reference only, but once you have established that slant line, I want you to keep that slant line. And all your strokes should follow that slant line. So for example, the straight line should go down along this angle. The underturn comes down at this angle. When you come back up, it will follow up this angle again. Overturn, you follow this angle when you're coming up. After your turn, when you come down, it follows this angle. Your complex curve, up, down, up. It follows all these angles. And this one right here, this part actually, it's a straight line. Oval, this is where the slant line comes in ascending loop, descending loop, and your reverse oval. I will show you why that is important. For example, in this word bride, if all your strokes are on this slant line, it's going to look more refined than if, let's say, your stroke is all over the place. So for example, your R, when it comes down, you see right here, this is actually following this line, and then your ascending loop is actually kind of wonky. It's actually coming down this way, and then it comes down this way. So you want to make sure that all your strokes are following one angle, and it will make your words more composed. We're going to start off with our lead-in stroke. This is the dot where it starts, and you're going to follow the arrow. We're going from the base to the waistline, and we're going to curve upward in a slight angle. And it's not just going like this, it's a slight curve upward. So here we go, we're going to start curving upward, curving upward, curving upward, curving upward, curving upward. And you can do a row of these. So at any point in time, if you find that my instruction is going way too fast, you can either pause the video or go back to it so you can follow along. So the next line that we'll be doing is the straight line coming down, and we're going to thicken the stroke. So it's going from the top to the bottom, and so here it is, from top to bottom, and we're going to thicken the stroke, and we're going to fill it in. Okay, top to bottom, Going to thicken the stroke and fill it in. So one of the things that I always recommend is go slow. Anytime you go upward, it's a breathe in stroke, and anytime you come down is a breathe out stroke. So slow and steady is the best way to go. And you can fill out your line. And the next stroke that we're doing is a underturn. We're going to go along the slant angle coming straight down, and we're going to come back up and going to be following the slant angle. So we're going to go straight down, coming back up, and we're going to here, going to thicken the line. You want to finish the thickening of the stroke before you start the turn. So then this way, you can see that there is a thin line going into the curve and coming back up. And that's what you want to achieve. So it's the same thing when you come down, it's a breathe out stroke, and then when you come back up, it's a breathe in stroke. So fill out this line on your own. And we're going to go to the next one, which is the overturn. And the same thing, when you come up, is along the slant angle, and come down, it also follows the slant angle. Breathe in, breathe out. And then when you're filling the thick line, it is only after the turn that's when you fill out the thick line. Breathe in, breathe out, and then fill in the thick line. So that's the overturn. One that we will be doing is the complex turn or the complex curve. So the next one we'll be doing is the complex curve. So we're going to go up, around and down, and go up again. So breathe in, breathe out, and breathe in again, and then it's in the middle that will be thickening the line. So all these up, down, and upstroke, they should go along the slant angle. Up, down, and up. And then we're going to thicken the line. And you can see that it really doesn't matter which side you thicken, but the main goal is that this space in the middle is about the same as the underturn on this side. So when you're writing it, if let's say your overturn is a little bit too big and your underturn is too small, then you can thicken on this side, on the left side. Or if your overturn is too small but then your underturn is too big, then you can thicken the line on the opposite side. And then the next one that we will be doing is the oval. And I usually start off at the 1 o'clock and comes up and down and up again. And we're going to thicken the line after the curve has finished and ended before the lower curve starts. And same thing, we're going to down and up and thicken the oval. Okay, so the next one is the ascending loop. The ascending loop, we're going to start from the waistline. It's going to come up and come down and meet the baseline. And we're going to, after we finish the curve, that's when we start thickening the line. So it's going to come down and finish off at the base. And for the descending loop, we're going to start from the X height because we are only doing 2, so I dismissed the ascending line. So this is where the X height hit is, and then come down to through the base, come down to meet the descending line, and come on back up. And then we're going to thicken on the side. Once again. Okay, next one is the lead-in stroke, which we will not be working with today, but basically it's just a wave stroke for the uppercase letters. So just want to show you how that's done. And this one is the reverse oval. So basically we're starting from here, we're going around, and we're going back. It's like a number 2. And then we're going to thicken the down part of the stroke. Okay. So these are all the basic strokes. There are a few letters that have strokes that are not based on these ones, so I will go through those. These strokes are the ones that we pretty much encounter for majority of the letters. So if you can focus on creating each of these strokes separately, and once we combine them together, then it will form a letter. So now let's work on a lowercase. So first thing, of course, we have the letter A. So the letter A is basically combining the oval and the underturn, but we're going to end up around halfway through. And when you put them together, you have the letter A. So let's start with that one. So oval, we're going to thicken the stroke, and then the underturn, and then there's your A. Usually the exit stroke of the letter is the last stroke of the letter. If it ends up like this, I usually leave it around the halfway point, halfway between the baseline and the X height, and that will help me in going into my next letter. Of course, it also depends on what my following letter is. So that will help me in determining how far up or down this stroke will end. One of the things I would like to let you know is if there is exit stroke that looks like this, I always encourage people to remember to come back up. So practice this stroke right here, come back up, and that will help a lot in terms of connecting to the next stroke or the next letter. So we're going to practice the A one more time. So oval, thicken the stroke, and then underturn, and then thicken the stroke. So for the B, ascending loop, thicken the stroke, and then the reverse oval, and then thicken this part of the loop. Then you have your B. One more time. Ascending loop, thicken the stroke, and then the reverse oval, and then thicken this part. C is just basically a half oval, like that. I usually like to put this part of the curve a tiny bit closer so that when it go lead out, this part is a little bit wider so that it will give it some space when I connect to the next letter. So that's the C. D, there are 3 strokes combined, oval, ascending loop, but before we hit the baseline, we're going to lead it out with the underturn. So oval, thicken the stroke, and then ascending loop, down, and then underturn. And one of the things that I also like to give you is that I usually like to thicken the strokes as I go, because if I write the next letter, sometimes I may not have enough space to thicken that stroke. And also when you're doing like an ascending loop, give yourself some space before you come down so that you have some space to thicken your line. So we'll do it one more time. Thicken the stroke, and then give yourself some space, come up and down, and then thicken the line. So the E, I like to start from here, give yourself some space so that there is a little gap, and then you can thicken the line like that. One more time. Give yourself some space so that when you thicken the line, it has some room for the loop. For the F, is a combination of the ascending curve and the descending curve. I'm just going to show you how it looks like. So this part of the ascending loop, it can actually start anywhere. You can start it a little bit higher or lower. So we're going to come up and around, come down all the way down, and then loop back onto yourself and come back out. So then we're going to thicken the straight part. So once more, go up, come straight down, and now loop on into itself again and come back up. And thicken the downstroke. So the G is basically an oval and the descending loop. And I'll show you about this descending loop. So the oval, thicken, and then I'm going to do a descending loop. And before I actually go through it, I would thicken the line first before going through it. So the main reason is because for some of you, you may decide to do something that is an open. My stroke is a little bit too fat so that you can't see that there's an open area right there. But pretend that there is a little bit more space in the middle, so it's actually a little bit more open. So if let's say you want to do something a little bit open, like that, as a style, so I should maybe like do something like this so it can show you. You don't want to cross it, you want to show an open space. So you want to fill this part out first before you finish your exit stroke. So that's what I mean by wanting to finish that thickening of the line first before you continue. So your H is a ascending loop plus the complex curve. So here it is, ascending loop, thicken, and then your complex curve, and thicken the downstroke. So same thing, once more, ascending loop, thicken, and then complex curve. Okay, so for the eye, it's basically the underturn and thicken. Now for the dot for the I and J, you want to make sure that it is in line with your slant line, and it should be no bigger or smaller than the thickness of your stroke. So same thing once more. Okay, so that's the I. And the J is exactly the same thing as the G, so I'm not going to write that. But same thing for the dot. It's going to be the same size as the width of your letter. Okay, the next letter I want to show you is the K, which has two little parts that you haven't seen before. So it contains the ascending loop where we're gonna thicken, and we're going to do a small loop that loops back onto itself, and then a little kick out on the bottom. So this is the small part where you thicken so that it will give a little bit of the thickness on this little loop and the little kick out. So once more, thicken the loop, and then small turn, and then kick out. So you want to do a small increase in thickness here and here. So the L I'm going to skip because this is exactly the same as the D. And I'm going to show you the M. So with the M, for the lead-in stroke, I usually like to start halfway through, come up and down. So this one, you're coming up. You still kind of want to imagine that you're coming up on the same slant angle, coming up and coming back down on the same slant angle. And we're going to thicken it. And then we're going to up, down, thicken it, and up. And then this is the complex curve. Okay. So one more time. Up, down, and then up, down. And you really only want to start thickening after the curve, as I was telling you before. Only after the turn and before your underturn kicks in. So that means the N is exactly the same. So we're just taking the first stroke and the last stroke of the M. For the O, there are different ways of writing it. So we're going to start off with the traditional one. So it's an oval, thicken this, and the lead out, and then we thicken this little part. So once more, just like that, and then thicken and thicken. So there is another way of writing the O. So some people like to write it like this, where they loop around, they come around, and then they thicken this part of the O. Okay, so for the P, we have a downstroke, come down, thicken this downstroke, which is the straight line, and then we're going to do the reverse oval, and then we thicken this part. Once more, and then reverse oval. Okay, and the Q I'm going to skip because this is the oval plus the second part of the F. So when you're coming down and around to loop back up, this is pretty much the same concept as the F. So I'm going to skip the Q. Let's do the R and the S because they are usually the two most difficult ones. So with the R, it's considered as two strokes, okay? The first one is coming up and around. You can stop right here. And we're going to go down at an angle slightly. And we're going to go down this way that is pretty much on the slant angle. And we're going to thicken this bit. So that's the R. So once more, loop up and around, come down, and you can make this a little bit rounder instead of this angular. So it's up to you what you like. So that's the R. And for the S, so the first part is exactly the same as the R. You come up and round. So this part of the S, think of it as the reverse oval, but instead of starting from down here and come on up, we're going to start from here and go around. So we're going to go down this way, and then we're going to thicken this part of the S. Same thing, up and around, and we're going to curve this way. And depending on how big of a curve you make, you can either thicken the outside of the stroke or the inside of the stroke. So it's up to you. So there's also other ways of writing the S. You can come up and around, and then you can come down and go like this, and you can thicken this part of the stroke. So that's one way of writing it too. Okay, so for the T, it is basically a very long underturn. Gonna start right here, thicken the line, and then we're going to do a line across. So for the U, I'm going to skip it because it's basically two underturns. I'm going to do the V. So with the V, it's kind of like a disproportionate complex curve. So we're going to go up, down, and up again, but we're going to come all the way up to the X height. Going to increase the thickness right here and delete out stroke, which is like that on the top. So once more, come on back up so we can thicken this part. Come on up. And the W is basically two underturns with a lead out like the V. So I'm going to skip this one. With the X, I usually like to try to keep the down part in the middle part as close to the slant line as possible. So it will help me keep the width of the letter. You don't want to have one letter that is especially wide unless it's like an M or a W. So that's why I like my X a little bit more closer to the slant line, this part, and then I just do a reverse stroke coming back up. So same thing. And then first stroke. The Y I'm going to skip because it's an underturn and a descending line. Now for the Z, it's two lines. This is the reverse oval, but instead of leading out here, we're going to stop when it comes onto itself. And then the second part is a rounded coming down. Okay, so it's sort of like this, but instead of starting from here, we're going to start from here and come around. So like that. And come back up. So I usually like to stop right here so that it gives me a chance to recollect myself to come down. So where you thicken the lines is right here and right here. Okay. So the Z is or the Z is one of my favorite letters. It's just so fun to write this letter. So those are all the letters. So now we're going to be going on to letter connections. If there is any questions that you may have, go back to the letter itself and you can rewatch that. Hopefully that will answer your questions. Okay, so we're going to go into letter connections. If you take a look at the last strokes for all the letters, majority of the letters end up having a stroke that comes out like this. So for example, the A comes out like this. Other than the B, C comes out like this, E comes out like this. The D, after the descending stroke, it does an underturn and it comes back out like this. So majority of the lines actually come out like this. How you connect them is basically how you connect the strokes itself. So for the A and underturn, if there is a ascending loop, you pretty much just write the ascending loop right next to the stroke itself, and that's how you connect the letters. So as you can see, it's pretty much one stroke at a time. So if you can connect the strokes of the letters, then you can connect the strokes to the next letter. So with the B, instead of coming down this low, you may want to bring it up a little bit in order to connect to the E. But basically, you're leading the stroke up so that you can connect to the next letter. These are some of the strokes that you may encounter for the letters. If you have an underturn and an overturn, then this is the stroke that you will be making. And one of the things that you may want to consider is what your next letter is. So that, for example, if it's a stroke like this, you want to do one stroke at a time instead of doing two strokes. So for example, you do your underturn, thicken it up, and then you try to connect it back from here to do your overturn. It's not that it's not doable, it's just that you may still see a little bit of a linkage at this point. So instead of cutting it halfway, you may want to do one stroke at the same time. So for example, if you know your next letter is the R, you're going to go all the way up and then stop right there. For your B, R, I usually like to come back up fairly close to do the loop. And for the O, after you have done your stroke, so remember the F, I was telling you, you can really start your initial curve anywhere along here. So if your line comes down lower, you can start off lower, but for the O, I will start up a little bit higher. And for the S, you want to come back up this way. For the M, you know that you have to go for this, so you'll be going up and down. And for the V, instead of going all the way up, I will just lead out like this so that it connects halfway to the letter. So as I was saying before, make sure that when you're ending your curve, if it's an exit stroke that looks like this, you want to bring your stroke back up, bring your stroke back up, bring your stroke back up, so that it will help you in connecting to the next line. So we're going to do these words. You can do this, okay? All right, with the U, we're going to do a lead-in stroke. So when you're practicing the letters, I did not put in a lead-in stroke, so you may start your word without it. You may want to do that. It's really up to you. I have put it there so you can practice having the lead-in stroke going into a letter, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. So here it is, lead-in stroke, underturn, going to thicken the line first, descending turn, descending loop, going to thicken the line, and then come on out. It leads into an oval, and then we're going to lead out with this exit stroke, and then underturn, and underturn. So that's U. Can, let's start off with an entry stroke, C with the thickening of the line, oval, thicken the side, underturn, and now we're going to go right into an overturn. Okay, so as you see right there, you know that your next line is an overturn, so we're going to continue it down so you don't actually stop right there. And then your complex curve. Okay. Do lead and stroke, oval, thicken the line, going to loop up, and then turns into an underturn and an oval, thicken the line, and then we're going to do an exit stroke. And then this lead in stroke, super long underturn, thicken the line, cross. We're going to do the overturn, the ascending loop, thicken the line, and we're going to do the complex curve, and then we're going to do the underturn. Now that we know that we're going into an S, we're going to come all the way up with the dot, and we're going to go around. Okay, so you can do this. All right, so you can practice this, and there is also another set of forwards, never stop looking up, so you can practice all these strokes.
Thank you so much for joining me today to learn faux calligraphy. I hope you learned something, and I would actually love to see your work. So if you don't mind taking a picture of your work or your kids' work, please send them to me through email or tag me on Instagram. I would love to see them. And now we only have enough time to do the lowercase letters, but I want to let you know that if you are interested in doing the uppercase letters, I am offering the full calligraphy worksheets free of charge from now until April 5th. So if you're interested in it, you can download it now for free. I just want to give something out just for the sake of it. I know that it's such a stressful time right now. So don't miss this chance. After April 5th, it will be taken off. And these are the worksheets for my full class. So that's why I will need to take them off. But from now until April 5th, they are free of charge. And I also offer pointed pen calligraphy workshops. I know that right now we're not offering anything in person, but when that is up and running again, you will be able to see some of my workshops. And if you're interested, I would love to see you in one of my classes. So thank you again for joining me. I hope that you stay safe, and I hope that it really inspired you to pursue something new.